And for more on these questions, I want to go to our panel who can help us understand all of this. Dr. Michelle Dupre, a retired forensic pathologist and former medical examiner, and forensic analyst Joseph Scott Morgan, also host of the Body Bags podcast. Thank you both for being here. Dr. Dupre, I want to start with you. There's a lot of questions about the fact that the family was told that there was not water in Riley's lungs. How do you explain that?
Well, there's really two ways to drown, if you will. One is a wet drowning, one is a dry drowning. And in a wet drowning, the person is panicking, they're taking water in. The other situation is when the person is about to drown, they do panic, but their throat basically freezes up. They have what's called a laryngospasm, and that prevents water and air from getting in. So there may not be that much water in the lungs if that is what happened.
Dr. Dupre, if you have a dry drowning and you are doing an autopsy, are you able to see that that happened? Is there something that happens to the throat or something that you can see as a medical examiner?
Typically, no, there isn't. Drowning is a very specific type of death, though, and it is something that we call a diagnosis of exclusion, which means that we have to exclude every other cause of death, and then it can be a drowning. But just because they were found in water doesn't necessarily mean that it was a drowning.
Joseph, I want to know what you think about this new revelation that Riley was not wearing the jeans, so no pants, and that the cowboy boots, he had these size 15 cowboy boots that were also not on him when the body was discovered. However, his shirt was still on him and his Apple Watch was still on him. The family is very, very confused and concerned by that. What do you make of it, Joseph?
Now, I think that probably right out of the gate, one of the things that I would address relative to this is I would be thinking about the speed of the current. I started my career in New Orleans, so I've worked a lot of waterborne deaths, Mississippi River, which is not too dissimilar from the Cumberland, and lake water as well. Many times the current will take shoes off, particularly if you've got slip-on cowboy boots, which he is alleged to have had on. I have a harder time, though, Brian, with the clothing on his lower body, his pants. And in that list that you mentioned, they didn't say anything about a belt. I'd want to know if his pants were belted as well, kind of digging into that, socks on his feet, those sorts of things. I'd like to know the status of those. And of course, it's very provocative when you think about this. Anytime, and I think that Michelle probably will agree with me on this, anytime that we have someone that is unclad, particularly in the lower body, it's rather provocative when you begin to think about it. And so we take a harder look at those kinds of cases because any number of things can at least be implied. We have to follow that line of logic to its finality. It's troubling to me, however, that the Nashville police said that, that they're no longer investigating this. And their autopsy, I think that one of the commentators stated that just a second ago, that their autopsy had revealed nothing. They being the Nashville police, it's not their autopsy. It is the coroner/medical examiner's autopsy. And to this point, we don't have toxicology yet. So I think they've really jumped the gun on this. I have a problem with this. We need to know what's going on in this young man's system.
Yeah, and the fact, again, that he had the shirt on, but the pants. And I asked yesterday the family spokesman if he was wearing a belt. They don't know right now. I would assume he was, but we don't know the answer to that question right now. It's interesting, Dr. Dupre, I was talking to another expert earlier who said that bodies without penetrating wounds, I wrote down what he told me, can bloat and make the clothes tighter. And what the police have said so far about Riley is that there were no signs of foul play, no penetrating wounds, nothing like that. So is it possible that the body would have bloated and made it even more difficult for the clothes to come off?
It is, of course, but that depends on when the clothes came off. As was mentioned earlier, my understanding is that the current in this particular river does flow pretty rapidly, and there's all types of debris and obstacles in that river that can jerk off the clothes, tear the clothes, anything like that. So the body is not going to bloat for probably 2 to 3 days. He was in there for around 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so I also want to make a point that we have something in law enforcement called the totality of circumstances. We can't just look at one thing. We need to look at everything surrounding this case. And I do agree. I think maybe we're a little premature in this right now. There's more to be investigated.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.